Everyone, let's get this show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's February 8th, 2023. My name's Eric Osterman, and I'm going to be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse is a DevOps accelerator, which helps companies conquer AWS using our proven blueprints for Terraform. If you're starting from scratch or just not that happy with what you have today, you should head over to cloudposse.com/quiz and book a session with me. I'll show you exactly what your future could look like. And best of all, you don't have to wait for it. It's all available today. For those of you new to the call, the format's very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. If you're curious about Cloud Posse or any of our open source tools, this is a great place to ask. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/office hours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/office hours. We host these calls every week. Our call today is recorded. We'll automatically post a recording of this session to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy the content and want to support what we do over here, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. It helps us out a great deal. Just go to youtube.com/cloudposse. Again, youtube.com/cloudposse. So with that said, let's get into some announcements. So the first announcement, it's near and dear to my heart. First of all, we've overhauled Cloud Posse's documentation. It is now on Docusaurus, just like atmos.tools, which is our workflow automation tool, thoroughly documented. So the Cloud Posse documentation, at this time, the majority of the content is still what we had previously, but we've added three things that's huge. One is that we've added the documentation for all of our AWS components. These are our Terraform root modules that are open source and leverage all of our less opinionated Terraform child modules. All of this is searchable via Algolia, so that makes it easier for discovery. And then we've also indexed all of our AWS all of our modules, period, on our GitHub, broken down by provider here. So our Cloudflare modules, Datadog modules, GitHub modules, Opsgenie, AWS. Of course, AWS is where the majority of our modules are, and all of this is searchable. Now, you could say one could just go to the registry. That's fine, except for it's a little harder to filter and narrow down for specific things from a vendor like Cloud Posse. We're trying to provide a one-stop shop to understand the whole Cloud Posse ecosystem and use it together. So we are also coming out with the documentation for our reference architecture published under this site that will be withheld, though, for obviously customers. If you're curious about using the Cloud Posse reference architecture, that's a great reason to head over to cloudposse.com and take the quiz there to see if we're a good fit for what you need. Anyone have any questions about what we're doing here with the docs at Cloud Posse? All right. The next announcement was something I believe, managed chaos. Michael Jenkins shared, which is nice that Amazon's come out with a tool. There's so many of these, I can't keep track of them anymore. Another tool that helps you check, if you're running with sane defaults in your EKS clusters with some console output. Perhaps something that you could stuff into a GitHub action. And related to that is another project which I find even more interesting, which is Amazon's published best practices now for EKS. So dig into that if you're looking to get any recommendations for how you can improve your usage of EKS. Also interesting is they have EKS scalability best practices as well. Michael Jenkins, anything you'd like to add to this that you found interesting? Oh, Michael, we can't hear you. I see you unmuted yourself, but we can't hear you.
Yeah, I've been having microphone issues today. It's all good. Nothing more to add here. Yeah, I just thought that was some cool, some cool tooling. Yeah, you could add the CICD if you just wanted another check for your, EKS clusters and whatnot.
Yeah, I agree. Another post that caught my attention was this one here. I guess it struck me near and dear because something that I did back in college as a Math 199 project was developing a code search engine and realizing just how difficult it was because all the standard techniques such as stemming that you would find in normal search engines are not what you really need when you're trying to do a code search engine. So one of the things they built was a specific engine that uses n trees or tries or n-gram type data structure, which is that you're basically indexing segments of a string one character at a time, and then traversing that tree and applying filters on top of it. So that was kind of the solution I ended up with as well. Obviously, I didn't take it too far, but this is exciting to see why they built a code search engine like this. What I think would be really awesome is now if GitHub actually open source the technology behind this project so that organizations can do an effective internal search engine for stuff like this as well. Code that's maybe not hosted on GitHub. This one here was shared in some Slack community I was in. I thought it was an interesting tool. We've just been working on refining our implementation of AWS budgets and sending Slack notifications. This is a command line tool to do some of the same thing. Ultimately, you want teams to be autonomous and responsible for their cloud spend. So you need to equip them with the tools so they can do that easily. This is a tool that could maybe satisfy that. The gaping hole, though, is it seems like it doesn't support filtering by tags. And yeah, that kind of makes it useless then if you're any larger organization and you need to basically see what is the cost of the workloads that we're provisioning by tag. And what also was nice about this tool is it integrated with Slack as well and sent some nicer budget notifications to Slack. When you use the native integrations with AWS cost controls, whatever it's called, they're pretty raw looking, like almost SNS topic notifications, nothing that I enjoy looking at. So this is a much better visualization of it. Now, could be improved even on that. Anyone else have similar recommendations on tools like this for understanding your AWS cost on the command line? All right. This was trending on Reddit, was a guide actually from Grafana Labs, a 5-part series on how to effectively monitor Kubernetes. If you are struggling with kind of what to focus on, because there's more metrics than you can ever know what to do with, this might be a good place to start. And Helmet, I like the name more than I thought the project was necessarily that special. It's obviously in its infancy, but the concept of it is really good. And I wanted to bring that up as a talking point, which is that the biggest problem if you're using Helm at any scale within an organization is the maintainability of your Helm charts themselves and the templates that they're based on. One of the patterns that we've been a proponent of is this thing we call the mono chart. Create like one chart or a handful of charts in your organization that implement the patterns that you want to encourage developers to use. That way you don't need to create a new chart for every microservice, because then if you have 50 microservices, you have 50 charts, and like DNA differences between chimpanzees and humans, it's like only 1% different or something between them. So that makes it not very easily maintainable. Well, this concept here with Helmet is similar. You create a chart for the sole purpose of distributing templates for how you want to do deployments, how you want to do ingresses, how you want to do services so that you at least standardize on some conventions and make your charts more maintainable. So this will help ensure the consistency, for example, of your resource names and best practices, making sure that names are never, for example, too long and truncated. And when they are truncated in a consistent manner, and so forth. Plus, you can introduce your own helpers. In this case, it doesn't offer anything really above the normal. Anyone using this kind of pattern within their organization for templates, distributing templates for building Helm charts? Then the last announcement I had, boy, we are zipping through these today, was Werf, which is a cool little project.
Excuse me, I did drop a question in the chat.
Oh, let's see here. Question. Oh, Sourcegraph. Vlad also shared that. That was brought up too. Yeah, you know, I've come across Sourcegraph every now and then doing searches on like Google, but is Sourcegraph self-hosted, Vlad? I mean, is there an open source version or is it just a commercial offering?
Can you hear me now? Yes, you can. Fabulously. My microphone also is having issues. As far as I know, they also have an open source version. I've never used it, and I could be wrong on it.
Okay, that's interesting.
I don't know, but yeah, they were, as I mentioned in the chat, they are the biggest player in the code search area. And there are some fun startups like Code C, and there was another one, I don't know, it's somewhere in my bookmarks, that are exploring like more bleeding edge and figuring out new ways to visualize and search code. But Sourcegraph is the debatably big established player.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for sharing that and pointing it out. It does look like it's open source.
I use the Sourcegraph extensively for GitHub, like for searching open source code on GitHub before I got into the beta for GitHub's new code search. And Sourcegraph was a bit better. I don't know if that is still the case though.
It's really interesting. I'd like to explore this a little bit more. All right, and then getting down to Chris's question, any thoughts on Kustomize? The overlay concept seems similar to Atmos works. Yeah, actually, the more I think about it, the more I look at Kustomize, there's a lot of inspiration. You know, they have this concept of kind of overlaying layers. We call them imports. My thoughts, and I'd love to hear everyone else's, is I think Kustomize is great for customers or our customers to deliver perhaps their own applications in a more maintainable, easier way that's intuitive without templating YAML. I still don't love the idea of templating YAML. But where I believe Kustomize still falls short is it's not a packaging system. So what I love about Helm, and arguably why both Helm and why Kubernetes as a whole has been so successful, is it's made it very easy to distribute architectures that run on Kubernetes. Compare that to like ECS, and there's no such thing. And I find it therefore, you know, a little bit more painful. Like there should be a Helm chart equivalent for ECS for deploying Grafana and Prometheus and that full stack, for example. The other way I like Kustomize is, well, let's just say, if you're using Helm file, one of the nice things is you can use Kustomize then to basically monkey patch your Helm charts. So when you don't want to do the effort of forking a open source Helm chart because it didn't implement this one thing that you need to get your job done today, well, great. You can just throw in some Kustomize there and monkey patch the manifests to get what you need and move on to the next fire in your on your plate. So those are my thoughts on Kustomize. Anyone else have something to add to that, or totally dissenting views? That's acceptable too. Chris, any, Chris says that was helpful. Do you have any other questions on Kustomize or like how we see it?
No, I've been using, so I'm at my second company now using Atmos. I got exposed to it at my last company, but they were doing more serverless, and I'm coming into a Kubernetes environment, and I want to use Atmos for the Terraform, but I was looking at, you know, Kustomize and other things. I know you already Helm is part of Atmos, but I was looking at Kustomize, and it just struck me as very similar to how and I was just wondering what your thoughts were on it, because I was using Atmos, and I have a decision to make on maybe the Kubernetes.
The challenge that we have as a company, being transparent, is we are, you know, we want to be thought leaders. We want to push the state of the industry forward. We want to, you know, address the problems that we encounter working across multiple customers, so other customers don't have them. But in doing so, we have over the years introduced a lot of tools to our own detriment. And it works against us because unless somebody is aware of all the pain and the decisions and the trade-offs along the way, the addition of every new tool or these other things that we add is never appreciated. And it's just labeled, it adds too much complexity. And I hate that expression, but I get it. I understand why it's levied on companies, you know, when you have too many tools. The other problem we have is like we come from this like Unix philosophy of, you know, small tools that do one job very well. So I love combining all these things together. But even having like Helm and Helm file, you know, it's we've had a lot of pushback on like why is Helm file necessary, and we've been trying to pull back from requiring Helm file, for example, and going more natively with just Helm and Argo CD, for example. But that's kind of like why I'm not jumping right on to adopt Kustomize, because regardless of if we choose Kustomize or not, there will definitely be Helm. We will guaranteed use Helm. Because I don't want to reinvent all these other you know, charts that exist out there. So then this is just one tool on top of that.
Gotcha. And to be more specific, you mentioned Argo. I was looking at that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and you can obviously use Kustomize with Argo as well. Also, Matt Gowie shared a link that was posted recently on using right how you can use post render hooks as well. I forget if I'm confusing two things. Was this one using Kustomize?
This basically allows you to use Helm to monkey patch after the fact a Helm chart, so you can avoid having to fork the chart yourself if they don't support like an annotation that you need for a separate you know, thing that you're running. So that's the idea.
Okay, so it's basically
which
moving
I didn't
it up
know about. It allows you to do that extra step at the end
without using so Helm file has supported that for a while. So this is basically moving that functionality natively into Helm itself, so you don't need to have Helm file just to accomplish this one thing. Yeah,
exactly. And yeah, I've never been a Helm file person, but yeah, it's basically doing exactly what Helm file does. I know that.
Yeah. Cool. Let's see here. So, I had one more announcement here below the fold. Almost missed it. A cool little Helm dashboard. If you need to somehow kind of surface what is running inside of your clusters for developers or teams, this might be something to look at. I haven't looked deeply at it. One of the problems with all of these things is that they never solve the authentication problem. Like how, can you connect it with OIDC or OAuth or something to protect it? Otherwise, I hate the kubectl proxy approach to accessing internal services. And from what I could tell, that's probably what they're going to suggest. Let's see here. EC. Yeah, so authentication is an afterthought. It's up to you to figure that one out. All right. Anyone else have some exciting announcements? AWS, DevOps, Terraform, GitHub Actions related? All right. We will jump into some talking points then. So one question I have today is somebody brought this across, brought this to my attention. I can't recall if we talked about it on office hours or not. It's yet another tool for helping with policy controls on Terraform. It's called terraform-compliance. It's an open source project also on GitHub. Anyone kick the tires on this, already using it? How does it compare to TFSec, TFLint, Chekhov, and the plethora of other Terraform compliance tools? Doesn't look like any contributions on that one yet. All right, then the other talking point was this one here. Oops, I forgot to share the link. Let me look in my notes here. So I was reading this article here, and it resonated with me. Obviously, we operate a company that works with a lot of open source, and there's a lot of information about our open source that we don't have access to. Any sort of telemetry of how it's used, when errors happen. Basically, we don't know if people are successful with our modules. We don't know if people are successful with Atmos. Or struggling, basically. How often are they erroring or having problems applying Terraform modules, for example, or maybe permadrift, for example. There's this problem though in open source that for one reason or another it attracts very privacy oriented companies, and you can't just blindly start adding telemetry to open source without a backlash. So how does one do it? And how does one communicate it? How does one make sure people understand this is so one can improve and fix issues without having to them always be reported as issues? And they bring up a great example here with the Go language, having an implicit dependency on CLang in order to run any of basically any of their basic examples, like a basic HTTP server. And that could have been easily fixed if they just had the telemetry. And now they do, apparently, and that's working out. The article lays out some strategies that this could be done, which doesn't compromise perhaps privacy. I'm curious what everyone else's thoughts here are, as possibly Cloud Posse Terraform module users, as open source users. What's your position on this? And
I think as long as you, sorry, I was just going to say, I think as long as there's a means by which to opt out, and that's like a front and center thing that you ask, then it'd be great. I can see the value that it would add. in terms of building the tool better and understanding where your hotspots are and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think the one thing I would like to do, I don't know if it's even possible, even with the new Terraform plugin framework. But I would love to know, like, you know, if certain modules, what is their successful plan rate or a successful apply rate? And then we could see which modules in our ecosystem are consistently giving users grief. It's tantamount to using something like Airbrake or Sentry, so you understand what kinds of exceptions your JavaScript is having at the edge, which you otherwise have no visibility into. So it seems like, you know, running these things in a browser at the edge, people have no problems with. And my assertion is that people would have problems with this. We haven't tested or validated it, but I would hate to have a massive backlash if we roll this out. Obviously, there would be some way to disable it with a feature flag, and you know that could be set very easily.
I don't think there would be backlash if you like shared in a blog post your reasoning behind it. Like, hey, we want to build a great tool. We want to understand, you know, where errors happen, why, what people are using, why.
That's a good point.
And yeah, I just feel like you could be upfront about it, and as long as it is easily turned off and is, you know, almost, you would want it to be. I mean, this happens all the time with Mac applications or iPhone apps where I install something in it and it tells me like, hey, by default, we turn this on. And I always turn it off personally. For an open source project, I'd be more willing to keep it on. But for a CLI application like Atmos, it's interesting because is it the first time you run Atmos that you like prompt the user like, hey, you can turn this off. But yeah, it's interesting from that perspective.
Yeah. All right. Let's see what the other talking. Anyone have any other thoughts on open source telemetry?
I wonder if you're collecting open source telemetry, you would open source the code that does the telemetry so that people that are curious can see it. You can even go crazy.
Oh, it would have to be. Yeah, I mean, well, it would have to be. Yeah. If we did it for Terraform, it would be in the form of a provider, and that provider would be open source.
Sweet.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. So yeah, and obviously, if we add it to Atmos, Atmos is also already open source. So how that's implemented would be done there. Obviously, where is that data stored? How is it anonymized? And so forth would be another important factor of it. Okay, and then Venkata had a question. Are you on today, Venkata? I think most of the answers were already posted in the office hours Slack channel and sweetops. But basically, well, let me pull it up here. Venkata asks, any recommendations on an NFS-like solution for Kubernetes? I'm trying to support high density nodes with 32 plus pods that need storage, and it appears that the limits with how many persistent volumes can be attached, for example, 24, I'm trying to avoid using EFS and was originally thinking using Minio, but it turns out they dropped it from their offering entirely. Anyone here have Kubernetes-based recommendations? So others have recommended JuiceFS. That was also incidentally trending on Hacker News this week. I recommended FSX, not from experience, but just from being in touch with announcements. FSX does work with Kubernetes and is a managed service by AWS. Others have recommended that you don't even need to use persistent volumes. So that simplifies things, of course, too. You could just mount the EFS file system to the hosts themselves and directly share volume paths out of that file system. And then that should overcome limitations on the number of attachments. Any other ideas or recommendations for a like POSIX style file system, NFS style file system for Kubernetes?
I think that the FSX suggestion was a good one, but then, you know, I was surprised that nobody had. There's got to be a product company that does this so that, you know, multi-cloud companies can deal.
Oh, there's probably 25 of them.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that none of them were in the list, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. From my experience, none of them actually work. If you tried using Gluster back in the day, I mean, Gluster is still around today, and it still is apparently as difficult to actually run an available Gluster file system that can actually handle faults and failures and recovery without it taking 2 weeks to recover.
Well, damn, that sounds awful. I've never experienced that. Okay, so maybe it's just a hard problem, and you know there might be solutions in the space, but not ones that people would recommend.
What looks interesting to me though with Juice FS is how it's using like what Gluster would call bricks, and those are stored as blobs on S3. It's not clear to me what the metadata store is, and that's often one of the other problems. But now, do you think this is a typo or deliberate to bring back the old memories or good old memories?
It's funny that I read that same line and got held up on that too. I think maybe it's both.
Gotta ask ChatGPT. Has anyone had a chance to check out the new, was accepted into the Bing waitlist to try out the new search with ChatGPT on Bing? I signed up, but haven't been able to try it out yet. So I'm excited to see how similar it is to just the ChatGPT service itself. Let's see here in the chat. Vlad has a +1 for FSX. It's EFS, but slightly better, not by much, but better nonetheless. And obviously, yeah, huge +1 for S3, and just don't rely on a conventional POSIX file system. Obviously, you can't do that with legacy apps that expect a file system, but yeah, if you're starting anything from scratch, don't start it assuming you're using files, conventional files. All right, I'm out of announcements here or talking points. Anyone have questions to answer for the audience?
Yeah, is anyone using Rewind for the Mac? From the rewind.ai site?
Oh, using Rewind? Rewind.ai.
Yes.
What is Rewind? The search engine for your life. Oh, interesting.
So they're leveraging the power of Apple Silicon to record everything that happens on your Mac and using a high compression rate from some algorithm they developed. So you can quickly search through anything you've done on your Mac.
Interesting. So I was at first thinking that this would be like, what's it called? It's not Jenkins or whatever, but it's like, it's an alternative Spotlight system for the Mac you can install to quickly search through file. Alfred, thank you. Michael Jenkins, you would know that. Alfred, I was thinking it was like Alfred, but this is different. So this is actually literally recording everything happening on your Mac, so you can kind of go back in time and search it. And it's actually doing OCR on the content on the screen, so it's searchable. That's quite remarkable. Now, as a professional services company, what I would love is something that then I could tie this to, like how much time was spent on this customer versus this customer, and get developers away from having to track their time manually, and then pass that output from the screen into ChatGPT and make a summary as a time entry. Man, that would be cool. So yeah, have you kicked it? You haven't tried it out at all?
No, I signed up to get into their beta, and I did get an invite to it. I just haven't started it yet. They give you a month free, and I think it's like $20 a month right now.
I'm also in the beta. I'm not using it because I'm not on Apple Silicon for reasons we're not gonna get into. But I have a bunch of friends that are using it and they're pretty happy. So the app is pretty smooth and they are focusing quite a lot on performance. They had an update a week or two ago that made it like 30% faster or something. So you don't like notice that it's doing stuff while you're using your MacBook or whatever. And the search is pretty nice. So yeah, folks are happy with it.
So it's doing OCR. Is it also tapped into the audio?
Yes. And it
Wow.
does transcripts for your Zoom meetings and things like that.
Wow. Wow.
I'm glad to see they,
That's really cool.
aren't, they're saying it just stays on your local disk, because that is,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
yeah, that's like the treasure trove of let me get into your life.
Yeah. This is like, what do you call it? Like spywaring yourself.
So yeah, one question about the Zoom recording or video meeting recording. Well, like for example, this meeting, when we join, it says recording is on. You confirm it is on. For the case for this app, do your participants know that maybe you are recording or not? Or does it just kind of capture that summary for yourself?
Participants don't know. It's like how you would take a screenshot by doing what is it, Command
Yeah.
Shift or on Mac. Like it's local, you don't know. There are interesting legal implications to that, depending on where you live and what you do.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, no doubt.
literally
I
doing
mean,
a screen record, right?
Yeah, it's they have a fascinating blog post if you want to read it. They basically do screen recording, and you can tweak how often it is. So like 1 every second, 1 every 10 seconds.
Oh, gotcha.
Multiple frames per second, and then they do optimization based on that. And when you are connected to battery, they like do they see if there are any differences between the frames and optimize the storage 3000, I don't know how many times, so you don't get like multi-terabyte files for a day of work.
Yeah, and I asked about the Zoom session because I mean that's something I would be interested in, because often I'm in meetings where they aren't recording and maybe I am taking notes but I miss something. Maybe I don't download the chat but I want to refer back to something, and just to have that as a backup for my own personal notes to say like, oh, what did they say like 15 minutes into the meeting that I missed, and then I can go back and grab that. That would be pretty cool.
Michael, I just shared in the chat fireflies.ai. That's what I use for that. I basically send it to all of the meetings I join. I'm a big fan. Makes it so that I don't need to worry about doing, notes during meetings, which I spend a lot of time on and end up, talking about, and it's just a bother. And then I now have a recording and a transcript, and it gets shared and is very upfront about what is happening with people that I'm inviting to meetings. And I've only had one client actually say, "Hey, could you turn that off for this part of the conversation?" So I think it's worth it if that's what you're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks.
That's really interesting. We've been using Gong for many years now. There's so much competition in this space now. One of our customers uses Otter.ai, also seems to do something similar. The recaps in Otter are amazing. So that's what you're getting with Fireflies, or those recaps of the meeting?
Yeah, and I actually used Otter before Fireflies,
you
and
did?
my reason to switch to Fireflies was integrations, specifically with Zapier. Actually, like Otter didn't have any integrations, and Fireflies has a Notion integration and a Zapier integration, and just generally has like a good GraphQL API that I've hacked on with make.com as well.
We should catch up again soon and hear what you've been working on, Matt. Any fun zaps or anything that you'd share publicly?
Yeah, I've got some decent ones. I would have to think about what would even be interesting to share publicly, but yeah, you and I can definitely chat about that.
Okay.
I've kind of
we'll do
gone probably overboard in terms of like systematizing things, and I never know when to stop. As I think you warned me about back when you were like, you should get in on this. But yeah, it's fun. There's a bunch of like good CRM zaps that I have, but the thing is, I hate Zapier. Like I use it, but I think that their user interface is kind of shit. And then I tried out Make, which used to be called Integromat, and I was like, oh, this is so much better, but they just don't have as many integrations. Like Zapier's winning because they it's hard.
It's you came to the same conclusions I did between Make, formerly Integromat, and Zapier. Also, I can ultimately almost always get it working in Make, but I have to spend 10 times more effort because it's so low level as a no-code platform. While Zapier is so high level, it almost always works. When it works, it works almost always very quickly and easily, but you can't get the low level controls.
Yeah, I always, I'll like futz with something in both of them, and it'll be like 9 o'clock at night, and I, am just hitting a roadblock, and then I'll come back to it the next morning and be like, oh, it's just, let me attack it from a different way. But I know what you're talking about. True. It's like more power, more ways to shoot yourself in the foot type of a thing.
Yeah. Anyone have some talking points or questions? Alex has a funny comment. When there are more bots in your meetings than attendees. A funny thing has been happening to us is that we do these things called customer workshops. And there's some customers that don't show up to the workshops. They just send their robot to record it. Any other interesting DevOps questions? Let me just add one more thing, I guess, on this topic of the videos and stuff. And I thought it's interesting. So, Gong was one of the first companies on the market to do this whole CRM around meetings and recordings and transcription and searching. And it was very much targeting sales teams and sales organizations. We used it, we still use it for that, but it's been even more valuable to us from the engineering side as a record keeper, so we can very easily share conversations for participants who weren't able to make the call, or somebody who was brought into a project later on. So I think something like this Fireflies.ai or Otter, which seem to both have better and more competitive pricing than Gong, are really interesting for engineering organizations to keep track of all the meetings that happen, so that if you miss it, you don't have to stay out of the loop. Plus, it's so convenient to search, and you can listen to the recordings at 2 times the speed. A nice productivity hack. All right. Well, if there's no other questions then for today, maybe we just end things early.
Kind of an esoteric question that might be worth talking about.
All right, go for it, Alex.
Yeah, so been trying to think through a potential, like hiring is a problem for a lot of people. But like there's still people going to school for software engineering, computer science, all this kind of stuff. I find that with DevOps, like you need a broad range of experience and skill sets. Like I'm trying to figure out, if there's a way, or if somebody has successfully kind of integrated an intern program into like your platform engineering team or your DevOps team, whatever you might have, like every time I try to think through that problem, it kind of comes to the work my team is doing at my company is not low, like it's not like it requires too many of those like advanced skills to really be useful. And I don't know that an intern would get a good experience out of it. I didn't know if anyone had kind of like some thoughts around that, or anyone who's like maybe successfully integrated an intern program into their platform engineering, DevOps culture.
Yeah, I want to know that answer too.
I think a lot of people probably do, because again, I mean, if you can like work with the college, right, like get interns kind of into your company, software like interns are a thing, like software engineering interns. But when it comes to that like systems admin level side, or like the DevOps methodologies or platform engineering, like I feel like the skill sets there are more advanced and like not as easy to grasp for, or to create some kind of successful curriculum for both the business and the intern, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's an answer to your, or I think it's just a comment on what you're saying, because I think we can all agree that it's kind of a struggle. But I think that some of the really good platform engineers that I've run into are, software engineers in the past, or they have that like software mentality. They've at least they think about problems from that perspective. And I think that's part of it, is like maybe it's have someone focused on software, be a product engineer for part of their time, and then, kind of share them, peel back the covers and help them understand where it's actually running and how it all is kind of coming together. But yeah, it is difficult. So I can at least say that I empathize with you.
Yeah, like I've started a kind of a system at my company where we do rotate like senior engineers in, or like engineers from other teams that are already software engineers, so they can learn some of that side of the, the tooling that we're building to make their lives easier. Like they can kind of come in and contribute to that. And so like that's a little bit of an easier transition. I find they don't have to build the context of how do I build software. They're only building like, okay, how do I automate these things, or how do I have a better process for this or whatever, right? But yeah, I was just trying to think if there's a way to like bring a fresh face in there, right? Like they got computer science basics from their school or whatever, but they may not have practical experience. Is there a way to make that successful? Someone in chat said, or Dave in chat said, remember a former engineering director saying some roles are senior only. I kind of do feel that way, depending on how some of the teams I've been in and how they're structured, but yeah, just something I've been ruminating on. Didn't know if anyone had other thoughts.
Yeah. So additional thoughts to this. I think maybe the definition of intern of an intern might have to change a bit based on the requirements, like what's needed in the team, the set of skills that are needed in the team. So it might not just be like fresh graduates, like CS graduates. It might be somebody who has some experience with software development or DevOps or sysadmin, but still needs quite like a bit of knowledge to become like a full-fledged member of the team. So maybe the term intern might have to change a bit based on the requirements.
I think college needs to change a little bit fundamentally. It's still remaining way too theoretical, and there should be some tracks within college that are a little bit more practical, hands-on, and giving you more real-world experience.
I've said that for 20 years, just why I didn't go to college.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad that trade schools are so frowned upon, I think, still, but I think they probably produce some of the most effective candidates when they finish.
I think
Go ahead, Isaac.
it's definitely true that some roles are better suited for senior engineers and people that have a lot of experience, or at least some experience in software engineering already. But I also want to push us to confront that idea and that bias in our personal lives. And the reason why I'm saying that is that I am seeing a lot of, well, not a lot, but a couple of boot camps that are devoting to just cloud and DevOps operations type stuff. And a lot of them are being helpful for career changers, people in other careers who are trying to break into the industry and are going down that path. And I think that it's a really good thing to have that sort of diversity in our industry that is often struggling with having, people that all look the same, and being open to having, members that might not have software engineering experience, but are willing to learn, as most of these people are, is helpful. The one thing I will say, though, is that your team has to be set up to support people like that. For instance, we've been trying to hire someone as a DevOps engineer for a long time, and we couldn't get someone. And we ended up just hiring someone that has sysadmin experience. Now, it takes them, double or triple the time to get certain tasks done, but eventually they're learning and they're going to get to a point where they're self-sufficient. So I think it's more of, so it takes a lot of work on our part, and we're losing in the short term, but we're betting on the fact that maybe they will be worth it in the end. And I think that pursuing college grads too is a good idea, because especially in the current economic climate, I know a lot of college grads that are super worried about what their job prospects are, and they'll literally take anything. And so there's also kind of an advantage there, because you can mold them into your goals and your career, your company's goals. And so yes, a lot of things are for senior engineers, but if you really think hard, there's probably tasks that you can design for those people. Just know that it's going to be a longer ramp up period.
I want to give Vlad a chance. He had his hand up.
My points were kind of made by Isaac. Like, yeah, it's first, you need the culture to actually be able to grow those people. It's not, you must know all the Linux commands and use bash and this special config, you must have it and you must understand every syscall. Like, that's bullshit. The company needs to be set to help and encourage them, and they usually do need a lot of guidance, because very, very, very few even computer science programs have any DevOps, so, or anything regarding any courses or classes regarding operations. So folks don't get to see that, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting. It's very, very hard. And at the same time, we're like, you're not a real DevOps if you don't code. But hold on, that's weird. The hack, I would guess, is serverless. Serverless is a lot easier for newbies to understand than it is for experienced software developers, because newbies don't have the same preconceptions. Like, if you tell graybeard with 20 years of C++ experience, we're now testing in production, they're gonna be like, wait, what? No, if you tell that to a newbie and you show them that, yeah, now we can do this safely and this is what happens and la-di-da-di-da, like, they instantly get it and they are able to provide a lot more value. And there have been, I'm trying to figure out how to say this without breaking in the A's. There have been a lot of companies that use this strategy, and they have been very, very successful in getting new graduates to be extremely efficient. But again, there is that need for culture and for actually teaching people.
That's my primary concern, is making sure like the structure is there for them to be successful. We understand like an intern or somebody rolling in is going to take more time. The senior engineer, like a software engineer, maybe rolling in may take like just a bit of pair programming on new topics until they, until it clicks. But like an intern's going to take that on everything for a while. And so like, how do we do that successfully, right?
The one thing I would just like them to close with then on this was maybe thinking about the interns as more or sorry, how did I reframe it? Rather than seeing how you get interns fresh out of college, maybe see how you could find some of these boot camps that are helping people do these career transitions that Isaac is talking about, and see if they can become a feeder for your organization. And I think you're going to find a wide range of these kinds of boot camps, and not all of them will produce types of candidates you need. But if you do find that one, that could be an interesting competitive advantage.
Yeah, I agree. College isn't the only way, right? But like,
Yeah,
it's been pushed for like the last 50 years, right? Like, got to go to college to get a good job. So it is a good source of a lot of folks.
yeah, yeah.
And the theoretical knowledge
Charles,
can help.
Charles, you had your hand up a little while ago. Did your state topic get covered?
Oh, I was just going to add that, you know, getting it into college and university curriculums is a huge step, you know, and I think that's happening because I'm in that actual industry and they're using cloud a lot and it's slowly making it there. But I would say it has to be pushed back even further, right? Into, you know, computer science needs to be a science in high school, right?
Oh,
Because
right.
I think you know, I have daughters, right, that are only now embracing computer science in university. But, you know, why are we spending so much time on these foundational biology, right? Because computer science is behind everything.
Yes, totally, strongly. I hadn't thought about that, but I strongly agree. Just like you need to enter college with like pre-calculus or calculus.
Absolutely.
Nowadays, it should be some mainstream language, you know, Golang, TypeScript, or whatever. But something that gives you a way to programmatically express things to deliver your assignments. And then assignments, there shouldn't be like these constraints that you only can do it in Pascal, like when I was going to school. It shouldn't be something useless.
Yeah.
All right, we are almost out of time. Michael, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I was just, since boot camps kind of came into the discussion, I was going to offer that boot camps do have the capability to produce more well-rounded candidates than possibly internships or colleges. And one example that I've seen is if you have a cohort that's going through a program, every week of that program, let's say like the first few weeks, everybody's learning the base skills, you know, development, some DevOps, some product or program management. And then, so like through the last few weeks of it, say 4 weeks of it, there's every week is like a hackathon where you have to produce some product, and everybody rotates through all of the assignments. Somebody, the first week is a project manager, somebody's the dev, somebody's the ops, and somebody's like, you know, the program manager, whatever, you know, another support role. And then everybody rotates through each of those seats. So by the time that you're done, I mean, maybe some people are stronger than others in one particular space, but at least you have some understanding of what it takes to fulfill that role properly. I don't know if there's a way to do that in an internship outside of like some sort of rotation program throughout the company or organization, but in a boot camp, you can implement that like crazy quick within the span of a week, maybe how long, depending on how long the program is, maybe a month or so. But yeah, you really get trial by fire in those types of situations.
Also, a shout out to 100 Days of Cloud. It's a fantastic effort.
Let me see this here. What is this? 100. Oops. I saw you had it in the 100 Days of Cloud.
Yeah, I really wanted to get it in the recording because I know a lot of people listen to it. Basically, 100 Days of Cloud is a community that has a series of challenges for you to implement, like projects to do on cloud in 100 days that show potential employers that, hey, I do have some experience. And super friendly, a lot of really high-level folks are invested in this and they're helping folks, and it's been awesome. Like, it's something that a lot of folks are doing and it seems to be done pretty well. Sorry for causing this to go in overtime.
Oh, no, that's quite all right. Just curious here. Oh, this is great. I wonder if these could almost be good job interview take-home tests. If they had one similar, like for Terraform. All right, thanks for sharing 100 Days of Cloud. We'll be sharing all these links in our show notes, as well as in the Office Hours Slack channel. If you haven't joined our community yet, go to slack.cloudposse.com. This is a perfect segue. We've reached the end of the hour here. We're going to wrap things up. If you haven't yet registered for our office hours, go to cloudposse.com/office-hours and subscribe. You'll get an invitation to our weekly calls here that are held live and interactive. We have our newsletter at newsletter.cloudposse.com. You can subscribe to get all these links into your inbox. And then if you are curious about Cloud Posse, want to get a demo and see kind of what we do behind the scenes, go to cloudposse.com/quiz, take some answer some quick questions, and you'll end up talking with me directly, and look forward to hearing from you. Have a great rest of your week, everyone, and talk to you next week. Take care.